All right, so today we are diving into Renzo REZ, this liquid restaking protocol that's been making some serious waves lately, especially after getting listed on Coinbase.
Yeah, the Coinbase listing definitely turned some heads.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're seeing articles all over the place, analysts buzzing about it. Even Renzo's own website is getting a lot of traffic.
It's understandable. I mean, a 50% price pump in an hour, that kind of thing grabs your attention.
Absolutely. So the big question is this just hype? Or is there real opportunity here with REZ?
Right. Well, I think the Coinbase listing is a pretty big deal, especially for us here in the U.S.
Yeah, definitely opens it up to a much wider audience.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, maybe we should take a step back and, just make sure everyone understands what exactly Renzo is offering.
Yeah, good point. They're calling it Restake Anywhere, which sounds super ambitious.
It does have a certain ring to it.
But what does that actually mean? In practice, how does it actually work?
So essentially, Renzo allows you to stake your crypto and still maintain its liquidity.
Okay, so instead of just locking it up?
Exactly. Yeah. Traditionally, staking meant you had to lock up your assets for a certain period of time.
Right, which could be a barrier for some people.
But Renzo gives you these things called liquid restaking tokens, or LRTs. And those LRTs, they actually represent your stake position. So you can earn rewards, but you can still use your crypto in other ways too.
So it's like having your cake and eating it too.
Kind of, yeah.
That always sounds good.
But it is important to understand how this Restake Anywhere philosophy actually works.
Yeah, right, because their website mentions connections to like EigenLayer, Symbiotic Jito. It's a lot of names to keep track of.
Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Think of Renzo as like a bridge between you and these different platforms.
Okay, got it. So EigenLayer, for example, allows you to use your staked ETH to secure other services and earn even more rewards.
Exactly. And Symbiotic and Jito offer kind of similar opportunities, each with their own sort of nuances.
Right, okay.
So what Renzo does is it connects to all of them.
Oh, that's clever.
So you can restake your assets across these different networks without having to manage multiple platforms yourself.
So basically, they're making these more complex staking strategies more accessible to the average person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But some people might say, hold on a second, doesn't this add another layer of risk? Now my ETH is going through Renzo before it even reaches EigenLayer or any of these other platforms.
It's a valid question. Security is always a huge concern in the crypto world.
Absolutely.
But it seems like Renzo is taking security pretty seriously. They're partnering with leading security and risk management firms.
Okay, good.
They use institutional-grade node operators.
All right.
And crucially, their code is fully open source.
Which means?
It means that anyone can inspect their code, look for vulnerabilities, and that kind of thing.
Ah, so there's that transparency that a lot of people are looking for.
Right. Transparency is super important, especially in this space.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get back to this price surge, because a 50% jump in an hour, that's dramatic even for crypto.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-catching.
So is this all just hype surrounding the Coinbase listing, or are there other factors driving this momentum behind REZ?
Well, I think the Coinbase listing is a huge catalyst. I mean, it instantly gives Renzo more legitimacy in the eyes of a lot of people.
For sure.
Plus, it exposes them to this massive user base.
Yeah.
We're talking over 105 million Coinbase users, many of whom are here in the U.S.
And probably eager to jump on the next promising crypto project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing at play here.
Right, because even before the listing, you had analysts like Brett Trading Guru over on Binance Square.
He's pretty well respected.
Saying that REZ had this breakout potential. So what are these analysts seeing that has them so bullish, even aside from the Coinbase news?
Well, they're looking at a lot of different things. One of the key indicators is the RSI Relative Strength Index, and it's currently in what's called overbought territory for REZ.
Which basically means what?
It suggests that there's strong buying pressure.
People are really wanting to get their hands on this.
Yeah, and another indicator they look at is the MACD moving average divergence, and that's showing a bullish crossover, which is often seen as a buy signal.
Okay, so those technical indicators are painting a pretty optimistic picture.
Yeah, it's looking good from a technical perspective.
But of course, we have to play devil's advocate here. Some folks might argue that this is just a classic pump and dump scheme. Coinbase listing generates all this hype, price goes up, early investors cash out, and then everyone else is left holding the bag.
Right. It's healthy to be skeptical, especially in this space.
Absolutely.
But if you look at Renzo's track record, I mean, they've been around since April of 2024.
Okay, so not brand new.
And they've shown some resilience. They've bounced back from dips, they've steadily gained users.
So there's some substance there.
And their total restake value, currently it's over $860 million.
Wow. That's a serious chunk of change.
That suggests real adoption, not just, speculative frenzy.
Right. People are actually putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. They're not just trading it back and forth. They're actually using the platform.
Yeah, that's a good point. But we can't forget, the crypto market is notoriously volatile.
Oh, yeah. That's always the caveat.
So even if the fundamentals of Renzo look strong, what are some of the risks that people need to be aware of before investing in REZ?
Well, first and foremost, the regulatory landscape is still evolving.
Right. We're kind of in this gray area still.
Exactly. New laws or regulations could come out that could impact any crypto project.
And there's always the risk of hacks or exploits.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality.
Even with the best security measures in place.
And, market sentiment can change on a dime.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Leading to sudden price drops.
So even if Renzo is doing everything right, there are these external factors that could come into play.
Absolutely.
Okay, so investing in crypto, especially a newer project like Renzo, it's not without its risks.
It's important to remember that.
And it's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Definitely not.
You could lose, a significant portion or even all of your investment.
That's why it's crucial to only invest what you can afford to lose.
Very true. Now, I'm curious about this restake anywhere philosophy and what it really means for the future of staking.
Yeah. It's a pretty bold vision.
Is this a unique approach, or are there other projects doing similar things?
It's a concept that's definitely gaining traction.
Okay.
But Renzo seems to be at the forefront. They're not the only ones offering liquid staking.
Right.
But they're focused on connecting to these various networks like EigenLayer, Symbiotic Jito.
Yeah.
It gives them a much broader reach and potentially higher yields for users.
So they're kind of like this one-stop shop for all your diversified restaking needs?
Yeah, you could say that.
But what about the REZ token itself? We've talked about, its price movements, but what role does it actually play within the Renzo ecosystem?
Well, REZ is what's known as a governance token.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means that holders of REZ, they actually have voting rights on proposals that affect the direction of the protocol.
Interesting.
So it's about giving the community a voice.
So they have a say in how Renzo evolves.
Exactly. It's not just about speculation.
Right.
It's about participating in the future of the project.
Oh, that adds another layer of intrigue to it.
It does. And that's what I think makes this space so interesting. It's not just about making money.
Right.
It's about being part of this movement that's pushing the boundaries of finance and technology.
Yeah, I like that.
And in Renzo's case, that movement seems to be all about making staking more accessible, more flexible, and potentially more profitable.
Yeah, that's a powerful combination.
Definitely.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from price surges and technical indicators to the security and philosophy behind Renzo's approach.
That's a lot to unpack.
But we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore.
So in part 2, we're going to delve even deeper into the technical mechanics of Renzo. How do these liquid restaking tokens actually work? What are the real implications of their restake anywhere philosophy?
Yeah, we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
So stay tuned for more. Okay, so we've talked about this whole restake anywhere idea, but now I really want to understand how the tech behind it all actually works.
Yeah, let's get into the nuts and bolts.
It sounds almost too good to be true, staking rewards without having to sacrifice liquidity.
Right. Well, I think the catch, if you want to call it that, is the inherent complexity of blockchain technology.
Yeah, that's fair.
But what Renzo is trying to do is abstract that complexity away from the user.
Okay, so simplify it, make it easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's try to break down the mechanics here.
All right.
So you deposit your ETH, or another supported asset.
Right.
And in return, you receive these liquid restaking tokens, or LRTs, as we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so instead of holding my ETH directly, I would have, say, a ETH if I'm staking Ethereum.
Right, exactly.
But how does that ETH actually generate rewards?
Good question. It's not magic, but it is pretty clever engineering.
Lay it on me.
So your ETH, it essentially represents a claim on the rewards generated by your staked ETH. So Renzo is using your ETH to participate in all these different restaking opportunities, like those offered by EigenLayer, Symbiotic, and Jito.
Right. We touched on those earlier.
And these platforms, they allow users to leverage their staked assets to provide security and validation services to other networks or applications.
So it's kind of like a diversified staking portfolio?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
But it's all managed behind the scenes for you.
So Renzo is essentially pooling everyone's ETH together and then strategically deploying it across these different platforms to try to maximize the returns.
Right. It's all about finding the most efficient and profitable ways to put those staked assets to work.
But wouldn't that require like a super high level of technical expertise to do that effectively?
Yeah, it definitely would if you were doing it on your own.
Are they expecting the average user to understand all the intricacies of EigenLayer and symbiotic and all that?
No, not at all. And that's precisely where Renzo's value proposition comes in.
Okay.
They're trying to make this whole process user-friendly.
Even for beginners.
Exactly. You don't need to be a blockchain expert to use Renzo.
So they're kind of like the interface between me and this complex world of restaking.
Yeah, you could say that. They handle all the complicated stuff behind the scenes.
So ease of use is a big part of their strategy.
Definitely.
But what about risks? We've talked about the general market volatility and the regulatory uncertainty, but are there any risks specific to Renzo's approach? Because they're essentially acting as custodians of everyone's staked assets.
That's a valid concern, and it's something to think about.
Yeah, because things can go wrong.
Of course. There's always the potential for smart contract vulnerabilities.
Right.
Or some other unforeseen technical issue.
Sure.
But Renzo has taken steps to mitigate these risks.
Like what?
Well, they partner with reputable security firms. They use institutional-grade node operators. And remember, their code is open source, so anyone can audit it.
Right. That transparency thing again.
Exactly. It's about building trust.
Okay, but let's say, hypothetically, one of these platforms that Renzo is connected to, like let's say EigenLayer, were to experience a security breach or some other kind of failure. What would that mean for Renzo users?
That's a really good question, and it kind of highlights the interconnected nature of this whole space.
Everything's so intertwined.
Exactly. So yeah, Renzo's reliance on these external platforms does introduce a certain level of counterparty risk.
Makes sense.
But they do have risk mitigation strategies in place.
Such as?
Well, diversification for one.
Right. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
And they conduct regular security audits.
Okay, so they're trying to stay on top of things.
They're not just sitting back and hoping for the best.
Good to hear. So we've talked about the potential rewards, the potential risks, but I'm still curious about this REZ token. We know it gives holders governance rights.
Right.
But what are the practical implications of that?
Well, it means that REZ holders have a say in the future of the protocol.
So they're not just along for the ride.
They can actually steer the ship to some extent. They can vote on proposals that impact everything from fee structures to new features to partnerships.
So it's a way for the community to kind of collectively guide Renzo's development.
Exactly. It's about giving the users a voice.
Well, I like that. It's very much in line with this whole ethos of decentralization that we see so much in the crypto world.
Right. It's about shifting the power away from these centralized institutions.
Giving it back to the people.
Yeah, exactly. It's about empowering the users.
And in Renzo's case, that community seems to be growing pretty rapidly.
Yeah, they're definitely gaining traction.
They said recently that their total restake value has surpassed $860 million.
That's impressive.
And a good chunk of that is on Ethereum, but they're also seeing a growing portion on Solana as well.
Yeah, they're branching out.
It seems like they're building a lot of trust.
And that trust is based on their track record.
Right. They've been delivering on their promises.
Their commitment to transparency and security.
And this vision for the future of staking?
It's a compelling story.
It is. They're definitely making bold moves, and we've seen how this restake anywhere philosophy is playing out. But now I'm curious about the investment side of things.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Is REZ actually living up to the hype?
Well, that's the big question.
We'll tackle that and more in part 3, where we'll dive into REZ's price history, its potential as an investment, and the factors that could influence its future.
It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Okay, so we've really dug into the tech behind Renzo, this whole restake anywhere vision. But now let's get down to like the real nitty-gritty here. Is REZ the token itself, is it actually a good investment?
Well, that's the question everyone wants answered, isn't it?
Right.
And like any there's no crystal ball.
Of course not.
But we can look at, the available evidence, weigh the potential rewards against the risks.
Exactly. So we've seen the price of REZ go on this crazy roller coaster ride recently, especially, after that Coinbase listing.
Oh yeah, huge spike.
But if we zoom out a bit, take a longer view, what's the overall price history of REZ been like?
Well, it launched back in April of 2024.
Okay.
And like many crypto projects, it's experienced its share of volatility.
Ups and downs?
It hit a high of around 87 cents back in February of this year.
Okay.
But then it saw a pretty significant dip.
Right.
And of course, the Coinbase listing news, that sent the price soaring again.
Over 50% in an hour.
It's pretty wild.
So definitely not for the faint of heart.
No. You got to have a strong stomach for this kind of thing.
But I bet those folks who bought in during that dip back in February, they're feeling pretty good right about now.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they're smiling.
But as they say, past performance isn't necessarily indicative of future results.
Right.
So the question is, can this upward momentum be sustained?
That's what everyone wants to know.
So let's talk about sustainability. We've mentioned, some positive indicators. Renzo's user base is growing. Their total restake value is over $860 million now.
That's a lot of money.
And they've got these partnerships with major players like Coinbase and Chainlink.
Yeah, those are all good signs.
It seems like they're building something with real substance, not just riding the hype wave.
I think so. I mean, they're solving a problem in the crypto space.
Which is?
Making staking more flexible and accessible.
Right.
And that has value.
But let's play devil's advocate again here.
Yeah.
Some skeptics might say, sure, Renzo's got a cool idea, but this whole restaking sector is getting crowded.
It is getting more competitive for sure.
So what makes Renzo stand out from the competition?
Well, I think what sets them apart is this restake anywhere approach.
Right. They're not just focused on one platform.
Exactly. They're building a bridge to multiple networks.
Like EigenLayer Symbiotic Jito.
Right. And that gives users more options, potentially higher yields.
So it's about diversification within the restaking ecosystem itself.
Exactly.
And diversification is a key principle of investing in general.
Absolutely. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Especially in the crypto world.
Yeah. Things can change so quickly.
So even if someone is really bullish on REZ, you wouldn't recommend, going all in on it.
No, I wouldn't advise that for any single asset.
Okay.
No matter how promising it seems, it's all about managing risk.
Right.
And remember, crypto should only be a portion of your overall investment portfolio.
Good advice. Now let's talk about, the elephant in the room here. Government regulation.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We've seen some countries embrace crypto, some countries are cracking down. How might all this impact Renzo and the restaking sector as a whole?
Well, regulation can be a double-edged sword.
How so?
Clear and supportive regulations can actually foster innovation.
Okay.
Legitimize the industry, bring in more institutional investors.
Yeah, make it more mainstream.
Exactly. But overly restrictive regulations, on the other hand, those can stifle growth, drive projects underground.
So it's kind of a wait-and-see approach?
Yeah, we'll have to see how things shake out.
Now, what about this idea of a crypto strategic reserve that we mentioned earlier?
Right.
Could that impact REZ?
It's definitely an interesting development.
If governments, especially the U.S., start stockpiling ETH and related assets, that could indirectly benefit projects like Renzo.
Right, because they're built on ETH and they play a key role in the ecosystem.
It's almost like a seal of approval from the government,
Yeah. Hey, this technology is important enough for us to invest in.
But even with potential government support, a growing user base, it's still a risky investment, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The crypto market is inherently volatile. And REZ being a relatively new project, it carries even more risk.
So the usual caveats apply.
Do your research, understand the project, and only invest what you can afford to lose.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Renzo...
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. It's clear that this project is at the forefront of this exciting and rapidly evolving space.
They're definitely pushing the boundaries.
They are. And their Restake Anywhere vision, it really has the potential to reshape the crypto landscape.
I think so.
But like any investment in this space, caution is key.
Always.
Do your research, be aware of the risks, and don't get caught up in the hype.
Sage advice.
Ultimately, the success of Renzo, and any crypto project for that matter, it's going to depend on its ability to deliver on its promises and create real value for its users.
That's what it all comes down to.
Well, listeners, there you have it. We've unpacked Renzo from every angle, explored its technology, its potential, and the risks involved. Now it's up to you to decide if REZ deserves a spot in your portfolio. But remember, knowledge is power, especially in the world of crypto. Stay informed, stay curious, and as always, happy investing.